The knock came like a hammer against Ethan Hale's tired heart, echoing through the narrow hallway of his small apartment just as the rain began to fall harder outside, and in that single breath between one heartbeat and the next, he had no idea that the simple act of opening his front door was about to change everything he thought he knew about love, responsibility, and the fragile miracles that appear when you least expect them. Because when he turned the handle and pulled the door open, the woman standing there looked calm and composed, but her eyes were filled with a quiet urgency, and when she leaned forward and whispered that her children were waiting in the car, something inside Ethan froze, not from fear, but from a sudden, overwhelming realization that he was no longer just stepping into a date, but into a story far bigger than himself. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of human connection, take a moment right now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Bright Hearts, because stories like this exist to remind us that compassion can still change lives. Ethan had never planned to be a single father by 34, yet life had a cruel way of writing its own scripts, and after losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, he had been left with 2 young daughters, a mountain of grief, and a heart that felt permanently cracked, held together only by routine and responsibility. Every morning began before sunrise, with packing lunches, brushing tangled hair, and walking sleepy little feet to the bus stop, and every night ended with homework spread across the kitchen table, bedtime stories whispered through exhaustion, and the long, quiet hours after his girls fell asleep when the loneliness crept in like cold air through an open window. Dating had not been part of his world for a long time, not because he didn't want companionship, but because he feared the disruption of the fragile balance he had built for his family, yet something about the woman he had been talking to online felt different, something steady and sincere that convinced him to take a chance, even if his hands shook as he waited behind that door. The woman who stood before him that night was named Mara, and there was a softness in her expression that made the rain-soaked street behind her feel suddenly distant, like a backdrop to something much more important, and as she stepped inside, she carried with her not just a small overnight bag but the invisible weight of a life that had clearly been shaped by challenges Ethan could only imagine. He noticed how carefully she moved, how her fingers brushed against the wall as if mapping the space, and it dawned on him that she was visually impaired, a fact she had mentioned in passing during their messages but that now felt far more real and far more brave than he had expected. Yet it wasn't her blindness that had made him freeze, it was the quiet, trembling way she had revealed that her children were sitting in her old sedan out on the street, waiting, because they had nowhere else to go. Mara's life had been a series of careful steps through a world that rarely slowed down for her, and after escaping an unhealthy relationship, she had been left with little more than her 2 young boys, a handful of clothes, and the determination to protect them no matter the cost. Shelters were full, family was distant, and the idea of bringing her children into the unknown felt terrifying, yet the way Ethan had spoken about his daughters, about building a safe and gentle home, had given her the courage to take a risk, even if it meant sitting in a parked car with 2 sleepy children while she stood at a stranger's door, praying she had not made a terrible mistake. Ethan's heart, already worn thin by years of quiet struggle, stretched in a way he didn't know was possible as he imagined 2 little faces pressed against fogged-up windows, waiting in the cold, and without hesitation, he grabbed his jacket and followed her outside, where the glow of a single streetlight illuminated a small, dented car and 2 pairs of curious eyes peering out from the back seat. The boys were no older than 8 and 10, bundled in oversized hoodies, clutching worn backpacks that held everything they owned, and in that moment, Ethan saw his own daughters in them, saw the same fragile hope that children carry when they are depending on adults to make the world safe again. Bringing them inside was not a grand, heroic act, but it felt like one, as if the walls of Ethan's modest apartment were stretching to make room for a new story, and while there was awkwardness and uncertainty, there was also something warm and unmistakably human in the way everyone tried to smile through it. The kitchen soon filled with the smell of reheated soup and buttered bread, and as the children ate quietly at the table, the tension began to melt into something softer, something that felt almost like belonging, and Ethan realized that the thing he had been most afraid of, opening his heart again, was also the thing he had been missing the most. Over the following days, What began as an unexpected evening slowly grew into a fragile, hopeful arrangement, with Mara and her boys staying in Ethan's guest room while they searched for something more permanent, and every shared breakfast, every chaotic evening of kids doing homework together, began to stitch their lives together in ways none of them had anticipated.